Welcome to the very first episode of the Subtle Shifts podcast. I am so glad you're here. This episode I'm going to be sharing with you is going to be so valuable if you are someone who is in a phase of life where you want more for yourself. I'm going to be sharing with you a process that I created through my years of experience and years of coaching my clients that helps walk you through how to evolve in your life. It will take you from where you are to where you want to be. It's very simple and straightforward. And stick around to the end because I have an invitation that you are not going to want to miss, especially if you are one of the people who are ready to make a change in your life. And I know many of you are. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. I'm Jennifer Della Quadri, and this is Subtle Shifts, the podcast where you'll learn how to transform your life from the inside out, one small, meaningful shift at a time. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so glad you are here. I'm so glad you're joining me here on this evolution and on this journey. If you've been with me through raising happy teens, I'm so glad that you've chosen to continue to join me. And you're not going to want to miss this episode because I'm going to be sharing something, a tool that I created through years and years of experiencing my own personal evolutions and also witnessing my clients through theirs that will take you step by step how to go from where you are to where you're wanting to go. I'm calling it the Subtle Shifts method because it really does encompass so much of taking things one step at a time so as not to overwhelm yourself and your nervous system. So it's going to make making a shift in your life a little more clear, a little less chaotic, and a little more manageable. And if you're anything like me, somebody who likes to really jump in with both feet, high achieving overthinker, this is really going to help you because it's going to take out a lot of that guesswork and make you feel a little less lonely on this journey. So let's go ahead and dive in. I wanted to keep this short and sweet so you could come back to this podcast and listen to it over and over and over. And also know that I'm explaining this on a very high level. I'm planning on coming in here in the future episodes to kind of dig into the meat of this method that I'm going to explain to you so that you can kind of learn and grow with it. And be sure to stick around to the end of the show because I have an invitation that you're not going to want to miss, especially if you're feeling called to make a change in your life. So let's dive in to the Subtle Shifts method. It has 3 phases. Phase 1 is called the call. Let me explain to you what that means. So here you are in your life. Your life may not be so bad. Things might be okay. You're settling in. Maybe even you have everything you ever thought you wanted, whether it's a family that you always dreamed of having, a job you always wanted, or your fitness level is fantastic. Everything looks fantastic from the outside. But you have this feeling inside of you that you want more. And there may be some guilt around it. There may be some shame around it. Who am I to ask for more? But here's how you know it's a call. It is coming from your body, not your brain. So you're walking through your life and you feel this excitement or a pull or just kind of an inner knowing, like an intuition telling you, hey, there's something more I want for myself. There's something more I want for my life. And it may be overshadowed by some of that guilt and shame and potentially fear. We will definitely be diving into that in future episodes, but you feel a call. You may also be, so that's one example of where you might be, but you may also be in a period of your life where you're feeling dissatisfied. You don't have what you were wanting, and things are not the way you wanted them to be. You can also experience a call there, and it's coming from dissatisfaction and the inner knowing that you are meant to have more in your life. More joy, more love, better relationships, better health, a more fulfilling career, dream or going into your purpose and really stepping into who you are, more confidence. So either way, whether you're in a position of your life where you're feeling pretty good, like here I've made it to where I want to be, or you're in a position in your life where you're like, this isn't it, I don't know what's going on, but this is not what I want. Either way, you're getting a call and it's coming from inside of the house. I like to make that reference because it takes it back to horror movies. I'm a big horror movie fan. And I like to imagine it, that old movie, the call is coming from inside of the house. And you get to choose at this point whether or not to answer it. And if you do, going on to phase 2 or the next step in the method, you're evolving there by making a decision. You're answering the call. And all that takes is a decision. You don't have to do anything at this point. You literally just decide inside of yourself, okay, I'm going to answer this call. That's your first subtle shift. You've made a decision, which will bring you into the next phase. And that's called the cocoon phase. I like to use that as an analogy because when we evolve, we're turning into the next version of ourselves. I know I've described the helix in here before for growth, where it's not a straight line. It's more of like a spiral upward where you learn lessons and evolve along the way. And so here you are in phase 2, entering the cocoon, because you are going to emerge on another level of the helix. Now, in the cocoon is where the work happens, and much of the work is internal. You're making decisions, you're putting up boundaries, and you're also taking actions that are aligned with where you're wanting to go instead of where you've been. And in the cocoon phase, it might be some difficult work where you're facing some shadows that you may have overlooked or may have kind of pushed to the side. But it can also feel really good because you're learning about yourself. And when you're putting into action the things that are aligning you with where you want to go, you feel good. You feel more in control. You feel like you are intentionally walking the path that you're meant to walk. It feels in alignment. That doesn't mean it always feels good. It's like you're breaking down and shedding the old version of yourself that's no longer serving you. And that's what's happening in the cocoon phase. And within the cocoon phase, there's kind of like a part 1 where you're more shifting on the inside, and most people on the outside may not even notice. So I'll use the analogy of exercise for this one. Say you've decided to finally focus on your health and your body, and you start to exercise, making a subtle shift to just maybe start walking a couple of days a week, not jumping in and getting in some hardcore workout that's going to burn you out and make you want to quit. You're making subtle shifts over and over and over in the direction you want to go, but nobody on the outside probably can see it unless they're watching you exercise or if you're telling them. That's phase 1. The phase 2 of this cocoon era is where people on the outside are starting to notice a shift in you, whether it's your appearance or the way you're showing up, the way you're setting boundaries, the things you're doing. Other people on the outside are noticing. Between this first part of the cocoon and the second part, there's a crossroads where you're not seeing the visible results on the outside and you're feeling called to go back to your comfort zone, to where you were before the call happened. It can feel really enticing because it's very known, but it's also where you were complacent and potentially dissatisfied. So when you hit that crossroads, when you're in the cocoon, you have a choice. You can go back, or you can decide to continue on. And if you continue on, you're entering the second part of the cocoon phase. But the difference between the first and the second part is you're feeling more pulled toward that future version of yourself versus the past version where you were feeling content and potentially complacent. So once you cross that magical bridge and you're in phase 2 or the second part of the cocoon, you're continuing to do the work. Then phase 3 is what I like to call consistency phase. You've made the decision, and at this point, the things that you've started to do are now more of a habit. You don't have to think about them as much. They're not as hard. They're more really part of who you are now. And it's this next evolved version of you. There's a lot more clarity in where you want to go. So in phase 1, when you're getting the call, there's some excitement, maybe some fear. Phase 2 can feel very chaotic. You may be questioning, should I be doing this? I don't know. This isn't for me. I guess I'm not meant for this. But you also still feel the call. And then if you continue, you evolve eventually into your consistency, clarity, confidence phase. So what I want you to do now is take this method, like this framework, the subtle shifts method, and look back on your life. Chances are you've gone through this process and maybe just didn't notice it or didn't have a name for it or didn't have an idea that that's what was happening. So go back in your life and think, when have I done this? Because you probably already have. And the truth is, you can do it now just as well. This is something you're going to be able to do over and over and over. And the complexity of it is you may be doing the subtle shifts method in one area of your life, but it impacts all areas of your life. So even if you just decide, hey, I'm going to work on my fitness, like I mentioned in the example before, that's going to impact your relationships because you're going to feel better about yourself. It's going to impact your career because you're going to feel a little more empowered, stronger. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be making better decisions because when you're evolving in one area, you evolve in all areas. That's the benefit of it. And you may be having a couple of subtle shifts methods happening at once where you're getting a call in your career and you've already gotten to the consistency phase in when you're exercising. So it's not just all areas at once. I'm throwing in it all and I'm answering the call. It's like, I'm answering the call for this area. So what I want you to do, here we are, is I want you to think, what area in my life am I ready to evolve in? Am I feeling that call in? And you may not have an answer right away, and that's okay, but just approach it with curiosity. Where am I feeling either dissatisfied or complacent? Where am I wanting more? Where do I want to grow? And then remember, that's the call you get to choose. You can answer that call. And if you're in a position right now where you're like, heck, I want to answer the call, here's where I'd like to invite you to join me in the Subtle Shifts coaching community. This is going to be for a group of people who are doing the Subtle Shifts method, upgrading their life, evolving into the next version of themselves, and ready to enter that cocoon phase. So in this group coaching program, I'm going to be teaching methods that will help you get through that cocoon phase with a little more grace and ease. We're going to hold each other accountable and cheer each other on along the way. Because making change can feel so isolating and so lonely. And I'm also going to help you reduce the fear, the chaos, and the self-doubt that will come along with you on this journey. So you'll have access to me, you'll have a supportive community of people who are cheering you on and holding you accountable with love and support. And you'll also be able to ask questions outside of the group so we can have support in and out of the group. And if you feel like this might be a fit for you, there's a link in the show notes where you can just schedule a short call with me just to see if it's a fit. And I'm not a fan of the hard sell. I'm trauma informed. I know how stressful it can be to get on a call with somebody who is giving you the hard sell and trying to pressure you into something. I am not going to do that. This is a chance for you to come in and say, hey, this is the change I'm wanting to make. I can explain to you a little bit more about what the program's going to be like, and you can decide if it's the right fit for you right now. So click the link down below, schedule a time to get on my calendar, and we'll talk about it. And I'm going to be diving into more of this in the weeks to come. So if you're wanting to learn how to get through this method, through this process and evolve, you're in the right place. And also, I would just love it if you would share this episode with anyone in your life that you feel like would benefit from this method. Anyone who you feel like is ready for a shift or for an evolution, feeling dissatisfied, or wanting to grow. I would love to have you share it with somebody you love so we can create this community of people who are on their own personal evolution so we can potentially help evolve the world and the people we love. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me. If you're ready to take the next step in transforming your life, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And if something resonated with you today, I'd love to hear about it. Share your thoughts, tag me on social media, or leave a review to help others find the podcast. Remember, the smallest shifts can create the biggest transformations. I look forward to hearing from you.